as a journalist, from your perspective, what worries you the most about a second Trump term? Is that something that you've thought about as a possibility and as a concern?
I've thought about it, towards the end of the 2020 race. I mean, I was wondering, do I need to move my kids out of the country? And I'm being serious about that. That was something that I was worried about. And people might say, "Oh, that's a joke," but I mean, I was concerned about it at the time because there was just so many threats coming in as I was covering the Trump presidency, and it
Well,
had
you had a lot of
gotten to a point where
personal death threats,
I
right?
had a lot of personal,
That got quite
yeah,
intense, from what I recall.
got extremely intense.
Yeah.
There's still some of that happens, but not to the degree that it was during his administration. And I thought, I don't know if that's something I should subject my family to for another 4 years. And so it was a thought that went through my mind. And I suppose if he somehow does get back in, if there's some fluke and he does get back in, I guess I'd have to re-examine that. I do
Where would you
worry.
consider going?
I mean, I don't. I
Haven't got
haven't
that
really
far
thought
yet.
that far. I haven't thought that far. I mean, I did think about it. I mean, I'm
Mm.
being really honest with you. And I do worry about what would happen to the press in another Trump administration. I don't think that that is Chicken Little. The sky is falling. I think that that is a very real concern that news organizations should have, and they probably should be preparing for that. And I'm just an anchor guy. I don't run a news organization, and I wouldn't pretend to know how to do that. But I think that that's something that should be prepared for. I think that there are probably going to be threats against the press. They're going to be the same threats that we saw taking place during the first administration. And I think what you're seeing in the news now is the folks that are going to be coming in are the true believers. You're not going to have the General Millies. You're not going to have the John Kellys. You're not going to have the folks who are going to put their foot on the brakes and say, no, 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 we're not going to do this, Vice President. We're not going to do that. You're going to have they're going to be a little more wily the next time around. And I've heard that from talking to people that talk to him from time to time, that they've already started to game this stuff out. They kind of know where they want to put people, and it's I don't think it's not something we'd have to use our imagination a whole lot to figure it out, who would go where and so on.
Yeah, I think that one thing that I see as a mistake the media makes is that Trump is sometimes treated like an ordinary president who is comparable to presidents before him and presidents after him, when in so many ways Trump is completely out of the ordinary. And I think that the media
Yeah,
falls into a trap sometimes of treating him like he is just any other president. And
yeah,
I think that that's something that I don't know if you saw this, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said, who's running as an independent, obviously in 2024, said that Joe Biden poses a greater threat to democracy, or he suggested at least that Joe Biden posed a greater threat to democracy than Trump does. What did you make of that comment if you saw it?
yeah. I mean, he made that to my colleague Aaron Burnett. I mean, obviously, it's false. I mean, and that's not taking Joe Biden's point of view here. That's not taking the Democratic point of view here. I think the Cleveland Plain Dealer editor in chief over there, who put out an op-ed, I think this past weekend, put it best. I mean, if you are to compare these two presidents, you can't say, well, they both pose equal threats to American democracy. You can't say what Robert F. Kennedy said and say that Joe Biden, it could be argued, poses a greater threat to American democracy. I mean, that's just false. It's patently false. You can look at the objective facts without any kind of bias or skew on anything, and just say that that's just not the case. If you look at what I was there at the White House on January 6th, I covered Trump when he was not acting. When there was an attack on the Capitol, I was talking to officials inside the White House, inside the administration. They were telling me via background sourcing that they were quitting, other people were quitting. And it was I've never written about it or really talked about it that much, but it is one of the darkest days that I've ever witnessed in my career covering the news. I never thought I would see a president of the United States just sit there and not do anything when there are people storming the Capitol and saying they wanted to hang the vice president. That episode in and of itself, aside his efforts to overturn the 2020 election in Georgia, calling the Georgia Secretary of State, and all the other things that were going on, alternate slate of electors. And I mean, you can go on and on and on about this, but just the actions of that day, objectively speaking, factually speaking, without any bias or skew whatsoever, makes him a greater threat to American democracy than Joe Biden. I mean, that's just looking at the facts of the matter. That's not somebody coming in and saying, "Hey, this is my point of view here." That's just looking at the facts.